Thank you to readers and everyone who has participated today and come out to be with us today in the sanctuary, and all the helpers behind the scenes, you guys for joining. It's great to see you on this Shabbat. We're going to jump right into the message, and let's see. Michelle, would you be able to pull up the little slide that I have there? Okay. I'm going to begin with this passage today. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the shalom of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your minds in Messiah Yeshua. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any virtue, if there is anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. Put these things into practice, and the God of Shalom will be with you. Now, our Parsha, Lekh-Lekha, is a Parsha all about trusting God. There are times when Abraham trusted God well in our Parsha, and there are times when he didn't trust God well in our Parsha. We only read a little bit of it. But in light of the season we're in now, and the week that we're in here, this coming week, I felt that trusting the Lord was a timely topic to discuss. But you know, it's a challenging topic to discuss because it's easy to say, don't worry, just trust God. You know, how many times have you heard that? You know, and you can't argue with it. But trusting God in real circumstances is easier to say than to do sometimes. So I want to approach it from two angles. Let's enter into Abraham's example from our Parsha, but frame it with this beautiful passage from Philippians that we just read that gives us a practical, hands-on approach for dealing with anxiety. Now, there are two kinds of anxiety that people talk about today. There's specialized anxiety, where there's something specific that you can identify with, and then there's generalized anxiety, which seems to have a more deep-seated and harder-to-grasp root of some kind. Anxiety and trusting God are closely linked together. Trusting brings peace to anxiety, but the anxiety itself makes it even harder for a person to trust God. Sort of a cycle. And deep-seated anxiety requires deep-seated trust, sometimes at levels that seem untouchable, even unreachable. In the inner healing prayer room here, the way Yeshua seems to bring healing is to bring his presence into those deep hurts. And by the way, if anxiety is something that you are struggling with during this season, be in touch. We can set up a prayer session to kind of dig deeper through some of these things in person or over Zoom. But we're in anxious times right now, and the higher levels of anxiety have become kind of a new normal for many people. My dentist told me a few weeks ago that they're seeing a significant increase in mouth infections due to cracked teeth from clenching and grinding while sleeping. COVID and the media's unrelenting coverage, the social distancing where the people around us become threats to each other, masking where we lose each other's smiles. Political tensions only amplify the feelings of uncertainty that are around us. My goal today is not to cure you of anxiety, but I hope to leave you with a plan to manage anxiety a little better and encourage you to bring peace of God a bit more into your life during this time, and especially this coming week. So let's get into it. There are 3 steps here that I've outlined to give us a plan for managing anxiety and cultivating trust in God that correspond to our Philippians passage. We have let it go, we have prayer, petition, and thanksgiving, and then jump tracks. So let's start, and we'll just walk through these 3 parts. We've jumped tracks. The Philippians passage begins, the Lord is near, do not be anxious about anything. I don't think this is like an admonition, like you're bad for being anxious, but more of an encouragement. You can let your worries and fears and anxieties go. because the Lord is near. So God's got this. He has a plan for your life. Our Parsha, Lekh-Lekha, begins, Vayomer Hashem el Avram Lekh-Lekha. The Lord said to Abraham, go forth, Lekh-Lekha. Go forth from your homeland, your relatives, your father's house to a land that I will show you. My heart's desire is to bless you. Abraham wasn't a young man going off to see the world. He was a successful 75-year-old man who's asked to leave his home forever and wander through the wilderness with no plan. There's no map. There's no GPS. There's not even any time frame that's given to him. Can you imagine the conversation he had with his elderly father? What are you going to do? You don't even know where you're going. Abraham has no worldly assurances, yet he goes because the Lord has a plan that he knows that he can trust. Abraham had to let go of his control of his circumstances. He had to let go of the need to know how it would all come to pass, to know what he would eat, where he would go, where he would sleep, who he would meet along the way. He had to trust God's plan. Now, last month, this is kind of a silly example, but last month I took Chaim and Lev backpacking for 3 days on the Appalachian Trail. And we're doing this thing. We're going to start at Connecticut, and then over the course of 10 or 15 years, and a weekend or two a year, hike all the way up to Maine. That's the idea, little bits at a time. But so we did this thing, and we had a plan. We had a plan to leave the car at the end of our hike, because it's one way, and then we'd hike from the beginning. We'd get to the beginning and then hike to the end of the car and have our car right there. But we forgot Lev's jacket, and then the sun was setting, and we weren't going to get to our campsite in time, so we had to leave the car at the beginning of the trail. And then after hiking 15 miles through the mountains, we would get to the road 3 days later where we would end our hike, and I knew it would be a 45-minute drive back to our car. So my backup plan had been to call an Uber to pick us up. But then it turned out, I found out on the trail that Uber didn't work out there. And I knew I couldn't really hitchhike with the kids like I did in the old days, so I had, 3 days here to really work on letting go and trusting God. I knew it would be a great learning experience for the kids, too. We finally got to the end. I circled up with the boys. We grabbed each other's hands, and we prayed. And then we walked a little way down the road, stumbled on a trail maintenance organization that works with teens, and they had a passenger van ready to go. Like the driver there, we just jumped right in, and he took us 45 minutes, no charge. Just amazing, right? An amazing thing. So the rabbis ask, why did God not reveal where Abraham was going? The Midrash says, in order to make it more beautiful in his eyes and to reward him for every step he took. How many of you have been in a place or on a journey where you felt that you were called to be there, but you could not see through to the other side? Perhaps we don't see the other side in order that when we get there, it would be more beloved in our eyes, and so that we can be rewarded for every step along the way. The Torah says that Abraham trusted God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. He received a blessing that he would not have received had he not let go and trusted the Lord. So planning is a good thing. Be intentional to live out of our values, our real values, and set your course to walk in the Lord's way. But planning should be a tool to follow the Lord, not our assurance that we rest on in place of him. And if you lean too heavily on your own plans, it leaves less and less room for God to work. And then we don't ever learn how to let go of the need to know the outcome before it happens. And this can lead to tremendous anxiety. And God's plan is better than anything we could plan for ourselves anyway, isn't it? I think that letting it go is a skill that we need to learn, like a muscle that needs to be exercised until we use it more and more, and it grows stronger and stronger. And so if you haven't strengthened this let it go muscle, then you might get stuck dwelling on a thing. And if you know how anxiety works, one worry leads to another, which leads to another fear, which leads to another, and soon you're in this full-blown panic attack. And you can trace it all the way back sometimes. Or it leaves like a residue, a low-grade anxiety that manifests in stomach problems and illness and stress. So look for opportunities. There's many of opportunities throughout your day to practice this skill and to become a let-it-go artist, I'll say. You can say, I don't have to be in charge. I don't have to be in control. God's got this. Lord, all I need to know is the next step. And then, like Abraham, your trust opens the doors for the Lord's blessing in your life. And so often, I think because we don't trust, we hold back that blessing to be received. Our Haftarah passage in Isaiah 40 that was beautifully read today, 40:31. Those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar up with wings as eagles. They will run. They will not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Those who wait on the Lord. We might also say those who can let go and put their trust in the Lord, not just with prayer, but with their real worries and their concerns of life, will soar like eagles. Those who don't will be stuck in them. God is God. He's good. He loves you. He has a plan for you. He's near. You don't need to be anxious, so let it go. And that takes us to our second step, because the Lord knows that we have legitimate cares that need addressing. Our Philippians verse continues, but in everything by prayer and petition and thanksgiving, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the shalom of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Messiah Yeshua. Prayer, petition, with thanksgiving. So in our Parsha alone, Abraham has 8 or 9 significant encounters with the Lord, and that doesn't account for the next Parsha. Think of the kind of prayer life that he must have had to be able to hear and listen to the Lord like that. But notice also during Abraham's low points in our Parsha, when he doesn't trust the Lord, he has no encounter with him. When he hands Sarah over to the Egyptians, when he gives up on God's promise and goes to Hagar to father the promised son because it's taken so long. When Lot separated from Abraham only to end up living in Sodom and Gomorrah and giving up his prized possession. Each of these times, there's no mention of Abraham encountering the Lord. I wonder what might have happened had he trusted God's plan and sought him in those particular areas. When we go our own way, we go astray. Hey, that rhymes. When we go our own way, we go astray. But if we don't spend the time to take everything to God in prayer, how will we even know his plans and what the larger roadmap is to follow? Having an active prayer life means that you're constantly turning things over to the Lord. And I've struggled with anxiety a lot, and I found a tool that really helps me to take the things that I'm anxious about to the Lord. And it comes from this passage. But the first step is you've got to have this daily intentional time with him without distractions. You've got to have it. It's not a bad and worse thing or whatever. It's just like if you don't have it, then how can you lose your anxieties? How can you do this? So you have to have a time, not a driving time, not a phone time, but a time that's carved out really just to be with him where you can be still, to allow these things to come up and process them. Otherwise, you'll miss it. And if you'd like to grow in this area, consider joining the discipleship course that we have, where we're going to get into this in greater detail and have some accountability and really be working on creating something that works for you. At some point in your time that you have with the Lord, and I love to do this with a cup of coffee, take a few minutes to just sit in stillness and quiet. Don't pray. Don't meditate. Just maybe be in God's presence. And if you're like me, the things that are on your mind will come up. All of a sudden, you'll have a bunch of worries that pop up and you start thinking about. But don't think of these as distractions. These are the things that the Lord wants you to pray about this morning. That's the idea. And so you can even ask him to bring up the most important ones. Make a list of these things in your heart, and then I like to have a journal, and you write them down on a list with a little space in between each thing. I call this my prayer list or my anxiety list of the day. Number 2 is take the first thing on your list, the first topic, and then ask the Lord about it and take 1 minute to listen. You only need 1 minute, maybe 2. And sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit like scatterbrained or whatever, I'll even pull out my stopwatch and I'll do a minute so that I can stay focused. And so do a minute, and what you do is you just ask him about it, to speak to you, to give you insight. You take it to him, and then you listen with an expectation that you'll hear something or that he'll bring some revelation or give you a thought. And then write down what you might hear, or write down any immediate thoughts you have. When I lead our kids through this at home, or teens through this at camp or whatever, they almost always hear from the Lord about something. It's amazing. We did this at camp a few years back, and I remember one teen raising his hand after we were sharing about this, and he said, I was listening about a family member who was sick that he was really anxious about. And he said, I don't think I heard from God about it, but I just felt this weird peace all of a sudden. So I said, well, you did hear from God. He just didn't put words to what he was communicating to you. He gave you his peace, you see. Don't underestimate the value of peace. So really, sometimes just 1 minute can change the course of your life if you listen. Then put on your stopwatch again and take another minute to actively pray about this same topic. Ask God for help about it. Ask him to make it right. Ask for his plans to come to pass. If you pray in a prayer language or tongues, you can spend time praying in the Spirit with this thing on your mind. And then Paul writes prayer, seeking the Lord's plan. Petition, that's like asking him to act. And then thanksgiving, with thanksgiving. So now intentionally use those same let it go muscles that we talked about earlier to move to a spirit of gratitude to the Lord. Thank him. Cultivate thankful feelings to the Lord, even around this topic. This is key to living in the Lord's presence. The Apostle Paul got this right. He had a lot of experience with anxiety, I think. So let's review where we're at so far. We've got let it go, give the anxiety, specific or general, to the Lord, and let go of the need to control the outcome. Prayer, seeking the Lord about it. Petition, asking him to act, and then move to thanksgiving. Then 3, jump tracks. And Philippians says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any virtue, and if there's anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. Put these things into practice, and the God of Shalom will be with you. So imagine that your stream of anxious thoughts are like a train track, and you've got to let go of control, and then you have to seek the Lord in prayer, and now you need to jump to an entirely new track going in an entirely different direction. Philippians tells us to dwell on things that are true, that are honorable, that are lovely, things that are pure, that have virtue, that are worthy of praise, and not only to dwell on them, but to practice them. I'll bet Abraham had to jump tracks a lot in his wanderings through the desert. He had to wait a lot without seeing any results. He was told that he would father a great nation if he did all these things, but then he didn't have any kids for years and years and years and years. This must have been a battle. And the moment he allowed himself to go down the anxiety track rather than jumping over to the God's plan track, what happened? He slept with his wife's maid from Egypt. When we get anxious, we feel out of control, so we feel that we need to act, often to act urgently, and then we try to take back control. And sometimes we need to act to solve a problem. Anxiety can be a tool to use us, to tell us that something's wrong. But so often, the things we feel the most anxious about are the things that are not actually within our own ability to change. Or maybe we can do our part, but then we have to leave it there. We need to learn to jump tracks and quickly return to something true and lovely. And that's how we return to the peace and the joy of the Lord. So now, in the moment of anxiety, that you're having, let's say, it's very difficult to jump tracks and dwell on something lovely unless your life is already filled with these things. Otherwise, how would you know even where to look? So you might take an inventory, in your journal. Write down all of those words in here, commendable, lovely, pure, and try to describe what they might be and what some activities might be and things you can think about that would be along those lines. And take an inventory of your life, especially in this season. Is your life filled with things that are true and commendable and lovely and worthy of praise? What do you put into your souls when you first wake up in the morning? When you relax throughout the day, when you lie down to sleep, what are you pouring in? I don't know. I find that there's a strong temptation to jump into some type of media first thing in the morning. Wake up, messaging, there's the phone, social media, keeping up with the news. Some people turn the news on first thing in the morning. It floods you. And it's not just the morning, it kind of permeates through the day. And if I'm not intentional, it will make its way into the bedroom at night, But I rarely find that these things bring me peace. And I don't want to pick out on one thing, but just given the time we're in today, I think we need to mention news media. Whether it's COVID stats, protests, the election, many people's anxiety seems to force them to spend their days glued to the news. Whatever TV or the web or whatever the news sources that you're looking at, we might feel somehow that we can hold on to at least a semblance of control over these national and global problems by immersing ourselves in updates and discussions and statistics. It's important to use these things as tools to stay informed so that we know how to act according to our values. But be aware that it has the potential to consume a person with anxiety and highlight tensions in other areas of life that even have nothing to do with it. And I'm not talking about a kind of Pollyanna ignorant bliss away from reality, but I think Philippians is getting at intentional, informed, and wise choices to dwell on God's greater plans. God's word, his Torah, his truth, his promises, his work, his worship. These are the things that the majority of our attention should be focused on. The upcoming election is a perfect time for us to practice jumping tracks. We all know that people are divided. I don't need to get into it. No matter what the election results are, there will be those among us who are grieving and those among us who are rejoicing. I was impressed with this quote from Rabbi Russ Resnick that was nestled in an article that he posted for the Union last week. I'll just quote part of it. Current politics and politicians too easily act as if gaining short-term political victory outweighs all other concerns. We shouldn't let that approach to politics infect our community. We are community, not just a collection of competing interest groups, because we're united in something far greater than the issues that divide us. And that something far greater can absorb, transform, and mobilize our opposing perspectives into a far greater and redeeming purpose. The election is important, but November 3rd will come and go. Vote according to your conscience and best ability. And then go back to Philippians. Let it go. Give it to the Lord. Pray. Then move to Thanksgiving and jump tracks. You might even try waiting until the next day to look up the results. There's a thought. Just to practice, Jump tracks and dwell on the greater truth. The Lord is still the Lord. And ultimately, his plans will come to pass for those who love him. And we know his plans. He wants to bless you. He wants to bless us here at Ruach Israel. And we have an invaluable purpose together in the kingdom of God. And we must remember, friends, that when we belong to Yeshua, our kingdom is not of this world. And though we do our best to bring the kingdom of heaven here and to make change and to do good, our hearts must in some way live there. And that's why Yeshua tells us to take his yoke, to lay out our heart in the kingdom of heaven. So let it go. Give it to God's hands. Prayer, petition, and then move to Thanksgiving. Then jump tracks and learn how to look to the land that your heavenly Abba is giving you, the greater promise he's giving you and calling to be a part of. And that the shalom of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Messiah Yeshua. And we can say, Amen. Now, at the risk of being too trivial, I think we need a little bit of joy. And so while we were doing this message, I was working on this message and talking to the kids about let it go. And of course, at our family, we haven't seen the movie in years, but we saw it once with the kids, the Frozen movie, and the Let It Go song just stuck out. It's all over the place, so we started singing it to the Philippians words. So we wrote it out here, and we're going to sing it for you here. So we'll put it on here. Join us with this song, and we can sing and have a little bit of joy as we let it go.
Pardon me. And can you help this? It keeps getting stuck. There we go. All right. Viva is going to help accompany me, hopefully. Okay, I'm ready. When times seem tough and tensions are high, you don't know what to do. The future seems uncertain. What if your plans don't stay true? The world is scary. What if everything goes astray? There's so much worry, I just can't keep it at bay. You're stuck in fear, your thoughts run fast, you feel the time to act is past, heart rate is up, blood pressure too, but I don't know what to do. Let it go, do not worry, you can trust the Lord your God. Let it go, don't dwell. Oh, we're trying to move to the next part. I'll wait. Let it go, do not worry, you can trust the Lord your God. Let it go, don't dwell, in the Lord all will be well. So pray, ask God, and listen to, put on thankfulness. The God of Shalom will be with you. Ready, next part? It's funny how God's perspective makes everything seem small. And oops, sorry. I needed help here. And the fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. Tracks, focus your mind, what is pure, lovely, just and true. Dwell on these things, what has virtue and is worthy of your praise. Let it go, do not fear, you can trust the Lord your God. Let it go, don't dwell, in the Lord all will be well. So pray, ask God, and listen to, put on thankfulness, and the God of Shalom will be with you. There we go.
Okay, thank you, Raina. Sorry about the slide mix-up there. Okay, well, we're going to close our...